Nobody in Maplewood knew what was inside the old man's house. For 31 years, Arthur Calloway had lived alone at the end of Birchwood Lane. The house with the peeling white paint, the overgrown rose bushes, and the curtains that never seemed to open. Neighbors waved. He never waved back. Children on bicycles dared each other to ring his doorbell. None of them ever did. He was 78 years old, and the world had decided long ago that he had nothing left to offer it. But on a cold Tuesday morning in November, something changed. A letter arrived. Arthur hadn't received real mail in over a decade. Not since his sister, Margaret, passed. So when the envelope slid through the brass mail slot and landed on the hallway floor, he simply stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. His hands, spotted with age and stiff from arthritis, trembled slightly as he turned it over. No return address. His name written in handwriting he didn't recognize. Arthur James Calloway. Personal and confidential. He set it on the kitchen table, made himself a cup of tea, sat down, stood back up, walked to the window, came back. Then he opened it. Dear Mr. Calloway, you don't know me, but I know you, or rather I know what you did. 22 years ago in the winter of 2002, you made a decision that saved my father's life. You probably don't remember. Maybe you never even knew the outcome. But I've spent the last 5 years trying to find you, and I won't rest until you hear what happened because of that one act of yours. My name is Daniel Reyes. My father's name was Luis. He was 43 years old, had just lost his job, and had 2 daughters and a son who needed him desperately. One evening in December, he sat in his car on the edge of Carver Bridge with the engine running, ready to end everything. You were driving home. You stopped. You knocked on his window. You didn't call anyone. You didn't lecture him. You just sat with him in the cold for 2 hours and talked. About nothing. About everything. About your own losses, your own years of feeling invisible. You told him that the world was quieter than it seemed, and that sometimes a man just needed to know that someone had noticed him. Then you drove him home. He never told anyone that story, not for 17 years. Until he told me the night before his heart surgery, because he said he didn't want to die without making sure someone knew. He made me promise to find you. Mr. Calloway, my father is now 65 years old. He has 7 grandchildren. He coached Little League for a decade. He volunteers at the VA hospital every Thursday. He learned to paint at age 58, and his work hangs in our dining room and in the homes of his children. None of that exists without you. I will be in Maplewood on the 14th. I would very much like to meet you, if you'll allow it. With deep gratitude, Daniel Reyes. Arthur read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, placed it on the table, and walked to the window. Outside, the November sky was the color of old pewter. A cardinal sat on the fence post, and small, impossibly red against the gray morning. He didn't remember Luis Reyes. He remembered that bridge, yes. He remembered that winter, one of the worst of his life. His wife Eleanor had died the previous spring. His son hadn't spoken to him in 2 years. He had driven that road many nights, and more than once had pulled over simply because he didn't know where else to go. He didn't remember stopping for anyone, but he must have. He pressed his palm flat against the cold window glass and closed his eyes. 78 years old, 31 years on Birchwood Lane, 1,000 days that had felt entirely without purpose. And somewhere out there, 7 grandchildren, a man who painted, a son keeping a promise. The cardinal on the fence post ruffled its wings and was gone. The 14th was 9 days away. In those 9 days, Arthur Calloway did something he had not done in years. He cleaned his house. Not frantically, slowly, deliberately. The way a man cleans when he is preparing for something that matters. He washed the windows. He trimmed the rose bushes in the back garden despite the cold. He found the old percolator in the cabinet, behind the blender, and made sure it still worked. He even called his son. The phone rang 4 times, 5. He was about to hang up when he heard, "We're Dad." The voice was cautious, older than he remembered, guarded in the way that years of silence make a voice guarded. "It's me," Arthur said. "I know it's been a long time. I just wanted to hear your voice." There was a pause that lasted long enough that Arthur thought the line had gone dead. Then his son said, "How are you, Dad?" They talked for 22 minutes. It was not a perfect conversation. There were silences that neither of them knew how to fill, old hurts that neither of them acknowledged. But it was a conversation, a real one, the first in years, and when it ended, both men sat quietly on their respective ends of the line, for a moment before saying goodbye. It was a beginning. On the morning of the 14th, Arthur put on the blue wool blazer he hadn't worn since Eleanor's memorial service. He made a full pot of coffee in the percolator. He set 2 cups on the kitchen table. At 10:15, there was a knock at the door. The man on the porch was around 40, dark-eyed, broad-shouldered, holding his hat in both hands the way a person holds something precious. Behind him in the driveway a car, and inside the car, 3 faces pressed against the window, 2 young girls and a boy, watching with enormous curious eyes. "Mr. Calloway," Daniel Reyes said. His voice cracked on the second word. Arthur looked at this man, this stranger who had spent 5 years searching for him, who had driven through a cold November morning with his children in the back seat, who was standing on a porch in Maplewood, with his hat in his hands and tears on his face. He opened the door wider. "Come in," Arthur said. "I just made coffee." Later, the children sat in the living room and one of the girls, the older one, maybe 12, looked at the dusty photograph on the mantelpiece. "Who's that?" she asked. "My wife," Arthur said. "Eleanor. She's beautiful." "Yes," he said. "She was." The girl looked at him with that particular directness that only children and the very old possess. "Were you lonely after she died?" "Very," Arthur said. "For a long time." "Are you still?" He thought about the letter on the kitchen table, the 22-minute phone call, the 2 coffee cups, the cardinal on the fence post. "Less so," he said. "Starting today, we spend so much of our lives believing that our smallest moments disappear into nothing, that the stranger we paused for, the word we offered in the dark, the quiet act no one witnessed, amounts to nothing. It doesn't. It never does. Sometimes the most important thing you will ever do is the thing you don't remember doing. And sometimes, if you are lucky, life sends you a letter,